Welcome to the debate. Today, we're diving deep into something really fundamental to being human, our inner voice. You know, that constant stream of thoughts, the self-talk that's always running in the background. It's incredibly powerful, profoundly shaping our well-being, how we feel, and our ability to handle life's challenges. So the core question we're wrestling with today is this. Should we really be aiming for like a purely positive inner monologue, or is true mastery actually found in skillfully managing and maybe even harnessing the whole spectrum of our self-talk, both the good and the seemingly bad stuff? Now, I contend that we have significant agency here. We can actively train ourselves using specific science-backed tools to really transform our inner world and make our mind work for us.
But I'll be offering, let's say, a counterpoint. I aim to question the perhaps simplicity of just thinking positive. I want to emphasize the inherent normalcy and maybe even the complex utility of what we often just label as negative self-talk.
Okay, let's get into it. From my years of working with individuals, I've really come to see the inner voice as more than just a reflection of how we're feeling. It's a remarkable, multi-purpose tool. It's capable of profound transformation, almost like a cognitive Swiss Army knife, if you will. I firmly believe we can absolutely learn to consciously reframe its often critical side, kind of mold it into a powerful inner coach. Now, this isn't about silencing it completely, but about learning to wield it more effectively. My observations consistently show the inner voice plays, at least 4 crucial roles in our daily lives. It powers our verbal working memory, helps us hold complex thoughts. It lets us simulate and plan, test drive future scenarios in our head. It's central to controlling and motivating ourselves towards goals. And critically, it helps us make meaning of our experiences, shaping our personal stories.
So the solution, as I see it, isn't to shut down this voice, but to understand these functions and learn to direct it better, turning what might feel like just internal chaos into a powerful guiding dialogue. It's really about cultivating a mind that genuinely works for you, not against you.
I see. I suppose I come at this from a fundamentally different perspective. While I appreciate the vision of the inner voice as this transformative tool, I'm genuinely not convinced that the main goal should be to simply shut down or eliminate what we perceive as negative self-talk. From my observations, things like worry, rumination, that endless loop of rehashing past events or future anxieties, and the inner critic, they aren't just flaws to be fixed. They're often an integral, really deeply ingrained part of being human. They've evolved for reasons tied directly to our survival. Think about our negativity bias, for example, this inherent tendency we have to be more sensitive to potential threats and losses than to possible gains. This bias isn't some kind of bug in the system. It's arguably a feature that helped our ancestors avoid danger and, survive. And this deep-seated wiring profoundly shapes our inner world.
So I'd argue that true mastery lies not in trying to eradicate these natural impulses, but in learning to skillfully navigate their complex and often persistent terrain. It means acknowledging their presence, understanding their evolutionary roots, maybe even their function. Trying to force some kind of purely positive internal state might actually be fighting against our very nature.
That's a really crucial distinction you're drawing there. And I certainly agree that our evolutionary history has, given us these capacities. And yes, absolutely, negative chatter can be debilitating. But I would frame it slightly differently. That Swiss Army knife quality I mentioned, it isn't just about its potential for distress. It's equally about its incredible capacity for positive redirection. We have these evolved capacities, yes, absolutely. But we also have conscious agency. My work strongly suggests the challenge isn't to stop the chatter altogether, but to understand its various functions and then consciously learn how to use it effectively. We can strategically shift our self-talk to transform an inner critic into an inner coach, thereby harnessing its immense power rather than, being overwhelmed by it. It's about leveraging those very functions you mentioned, memory, planning, self-control, meaning-making, but doing so with intention and with skill. We're not trying to become emotionless robots. We're trying to become more adept pilots of our own minds.
Right. I understand the desire for that agency, but my concern really, is that framing it as just a shift or a reframe, well, it might oversimplify how deeply entrenched this inner dialogue can be. Like I said, we evolve the capacity to experience negative emotions and self-talk for good reasons. This includes rumination about the past, those endless replays of what went wrong, and worry about the future, the constant what-ifs. And yeah, self-beratement about our perceived failings. This isn't just some surface-level habit we can easily tweak. It's often a fundamental aspect of how we process the world. It's a cognitive mechanism that, historically at least, helped us learn from mistakes and anticipate dangers. So to just label it as something to be fixed or silenced, that can be counterproductive. It ignores the underlying evolutionary purpose these inner processes served. In fact, as you know, attempting to suppress these thoughts often leads to them just bouncing back, sometimes even stronger. When this kind of chatter gets really intense, it acts like a mental sponge, just soaking up our limited attentional resources. Suddenly, focusing on a task or solving a problem, or even just being present becomes incredibly difficult. It's not just a nuisance, it's a significant drain on our cognitive energy.
Okay, I appreciate that perspective. And I absolutely agree that simply suppressing thoughts is, well, often ineffective. But to your point about the inner voice being a sponge for attention, that's precisely why mastering its use is so vital. When I talk about transformation, I'm not advocating for some naive suppression, but for intelligent redirection and strategic application of our inner dialogue. My observations over years of guiding individuals show that while our inner voice can be a source of rumination, it is equally a potent tool for prospection, for looking forward, planning, and problem solving. It's what lets us mentally rehearse a tricky conversation or visualize ourselves overcoming an obstacle. This isn't about denying the negative. It's about acknowledging it's there and then consciously choosing to engage our inner voice in a way that's constructive rather than destructive. We can train ourselves to use that verbal working memory not just for replaying past mistakes, but for remembering strategies that did work, or for constructing a more hopeful narrative about what's next. It's about consciously shifting from being passively absorbed by negative thoughts to actively, intentionally using our internal monologue as a powerful, positive force for change.
You speak of active, intentional use, and I certainly see the value in that, but, well, I'm still not entirely convinced by the idea that there's a singular, straightforward path, or even a common set of tools that will effectively, shut down or transform negative self-talk for everyone. My experience shows that people often get deeply discouraged. They try a single method, maybe something they read about, and it just doesn't resonate or doesn't yield immediate results. And that leads to feelings of inadequacy, maybe even more self-beratement. We've seen this pretty clearly in various research contexts, for instance, looking at anxiety. During the COVID pandemic, no single tool consistently moved the needle for everybody. The human experience of inner chatter is simply too varied, too complex for a one-size-fits-all approach. For me, effective emotional management, what I often call emotional fitness, involves a much more nuanced process. It's about learning about a multitude of different tools, yes, but more importantly, it involves engaging in self-experimentation, figuring out the unique combinations that actually work for you as an individual, rather than constantly seeking some kind of magic wand or universal fix. It's a highly personalized journey of discovery, really.
Right. I see why you emphasize that individual journey and the, let's say, danger of a magic wand mentality. However, I would argue that the power lies precisely in the diversity of the scientifically backed toolkit we now have. That makes it less about a single fix and much more about personalized empowerment. It isn't about finding one solution, it's about having many accessible options. Think about tools like distanced self-talk or expressive writing, even organizing your environment, mental time travel. These are simple, pragmatic tactics with a strong scientific basis. Take distanced self-talk, for example. Simply using your own name to coach yourself through a problem, literally saying, "Come on, your name, you can figure this out," it automatically shifts your perspective. It's almost like a linguistic trick that helps you step outside your immediate subjective feeling, mimicking how we'd advise a friend. This slight shifts can act like guardrails against negative spiraling. It stops you from getting totally consumed and instead engages a more objective, advice-giving part of your mind. It's subtle, maybe, but incredibly effective for creating psychological distance and re-engaging that inner coach. It's not magic, no, but it is a scientifically validated technique in your toolkit.
That's a compelling argument for the utility of specific tools. I'll grant you that. But have you considered the very real internal resistance people face? Or maybe more critically, the potential for certain tools to inadvertently backfire? For instance, when someone is caught in what I sometimes call a human tornado of negative thoughts, those moments of just intense emotional overwhelm, even well-intentioned suggestions can sometimes make things worse. Take your example of mental time travel. The idea of mentally going back to past struggles to gain perspective, maybe comparing your current problem to, say, a grandparent's wartime experience. Okay, for a world-class self-critic who's already battling feelings of inadequacy, this could actually intensify self-beratement. They might think, how dare I complain about this tiny thing when they went through that, instead of gaining perspective?
The approach really has to be highly tailored to the individual's current emotional state, their personality, to avoid this kind of unintended negative reinforcement. I've certainly observed that some people find it incredibly difficult to separate the challenge itself from the self-beratement, which makes them even more vulnerable to these kinds of psychological traps.
Okay, I completely agree that the application needs care and understanding potential pitfalls is crucial. That's precisely why I emphasize building a personalized toolkit and using strategic implementation, not just randomly trying things. The frameworks we often discuss are actually designed to anticipate and mitigate these very challenges. Think about the WHOOP framework: wish, outcome, obstacle, plan. It's a structured way to move beyond just wishing things were different. It forces you to proactively visualize the specific obstacles you'll likely face, including that internal resistance or maybe the chance a tool could backfire, and then to create concrete plans to overcome them. This makes your toolkit less like a random collection of items and more like a strategic battle plan, tailored to your unique psychological landscape. For instance, understanding that organizing your physical space can provide what psychologists call compensatory control, basically regaining a sense of agency when other things feel chaotic. Well, that transforms tidying your desk from a simple chore into a powerful intervention against inner chatter. It directly addresses that resistance by giving you back a sense of control without demanding you magically change your emotional state first. Or, if perspective is the issue, taking a walk in nature can trigger awe, which genuinely does tend to make our own problems feel smaller by shifting focus to something vast. It's about having a ready plan, not just a vague hope for when those challenges hit. These tools are powerful because they offer concrete actions, often shifting your state indirectly instead of forcing a head-on fight with really entrenched negative patterns. It's about building a robust, adaptive strategy for your mind.
I can certainly appreciate the structured approach of something like WHOOP and that idea of compensatory control through your environment. That really speaks to the practical, tangible ways we can influence our mental state. It definitely adds a layer of proactivity that is crucial. However, I still find myself returning to the fundamental point that this journey of emotional fitness, as I call it, it's ongoing. And sometimes maybe the most profound wisdom comes from simply acknowledging the complexity, the persistence of inner chatter, rather than always trying to fix it or transform it. There's a potential risk, I think, in always viewing our natural internal processes as problems that need solving. Often just sitting with the discomfort, maybe understanding its evolutionary roots as we discussed, and allowing it to pass without judgment, without frantic attempts to suppress it, that can be a powerful approach in itself. It's not about being passive necessarily, but about cultivating a more accepting, maybe a more nuanced relationship with our inner world. The material we draw from really suggests there is always more to explore in how we manage our minds, and that exploration has to include embracing the full spectrum of our internal experience.
And I believe embracing that full spectrum absolutely includes recognizing our remarkable capacity for change and growth. My core argument really remains this: by truly understanding the fundamental nature of our inner voice, its functions, its malleability, and then familiarizing ourselves with a diverse, research-backed set of tools, we gain the power to actively steer our emotional experiences. It's not about ignoring the hard stuff or wishing it away. It's about actively, strategically engaging with it. It's about self-experimentation, like you said, finding what works best for you and continuously refining your approach to make your mind your most powerful ally, moving decisively from being dominated by an inner critic to being guided by a truly empowering inner coach.
And I'll reiterate that acknowledging the universality and the inherent complexity of inner chatter isn't just a first step. It's a vital and ongoing part of this journey. The aim, in my view, isn't necessarily total elimination, but rather developing a sophisticated understanding and a robust, highly individualized strategy to prevent that chatter from becoming a truly destructive, overwhelming force. This journey towards emotional fitness is, well, it's a lifelong endeavor, and our discussion today really only scratches the surface of the incredible depth and nuance involved in managing our minds and fostering resilience.
Absolutely. The material clearly demonstrates that while inner chatter is an absolutely normal, inevitable part of the human experience, we possess remarkable agency to shape its influence on our lives. Thank you so much for joining us for this enlightening and, I think, robust exchange. We sincerely hope our discussion today has given you some valuable insights into the intricate world of your own inner voice, and maybe armed you with some practical, science-backed tools to help you take control of your thoughts and really make your mind work for you. Remember, you absolutely have the power to transform your inner critic into your greatest coach. And with consistent effort, with self-experimentation, you can definitely sculpt a mind that supports your well-being and helps you thrive.
If you found this discussion useful, please do take a moment to leave a like and subscribe to A Better Version of Myself for more deep dives into transforming your life.
You've got this.